An ivory-colored envelope lay on my kitchen table. I turned it over in my hands, examining the calligraphic address and the logo of the expensive restaurant La Marina in the corner. I knew what was inside without even opening it. In recent years, my mother had adhered to a strict protocol, a formal invitation by mail, followed by a phone call with instructions on how to behave or, more often, explanations as to why I should not come at all. I sighed and cut the envelope open with a letter opener. Inside was a gold-embossed card. Dexter and Yvonne Tallulah invite you to a gala dinner in honor of Dexter Tallulah's 55th birthday. May 18th, 7 p.m. La Marina Restaurant, San Mateo. You, I smiled. Not you, but you. How formal. How? I put the invitation aside and turned on the coffee maker. Tuesday morning was in full swing. In an hour, I had to be at a site in the northern part of town where a malfunctioning refrigerator in a meat processing plant was waiting for me. My phone vibrated on the table. The screen lit up with Mother. I stared at the flashing screen for a few seconds, gathering my courage, then answered. Good morning, Mom. Did you get the invitation? She asked without greeting me. Yes, just now. Thank you. I hope you understand that this is an important event. My mother's voice sounded tense. All of your father's business partners will be there, people from the city council. No jeans or work boots. I rolled my eyes. 6 years of living on my own business, clients all over the county, and my mother still talks to me like I'm a teenager. I know how to dress for formal events, and try not to mention your job. If anyone asks, just say you're in technical maintenance. I took a deep breath, holding back my irritation. My job was a thriving business servicing industrial refrigeration systems. At 26, I had 4 employees, an office in the business district, and a client base that many would envy. Mom, I'm in maintenance. I'm a refrigeration technician. You know what I mean, Yvonne said, her voice tinged with familiar irritation. Your father is hoping to sign an important contract with Randall Winship, and I wouldn't want his daughter to make a fool of herself. What, Mom? A successful entrepreneur? There was a heavy pause. I could almost physically feel my mother searching for the right words. Listen, she finally said with feigned gentleness. Maybe you shouldn't come this time. Your father is under so much stress with this deal, and you, with your outlook on life, will only add to the tension. I felt something tighten inside me, but not from hurt, from pure, crystallized clarity. Nothing had changed, and nothing ever would. Okay, Mom, I won't come. That's great, she exhaled with relief. I'll tell your father. Maybe next time. Sure, I replied mechanically. I have to go. I have a client. I turned off the phone and took a sip of my coffee, which had grown cold. Memories flooded back suddenly, as if someone had opened a floodgate. I'm 15, and I'm excitedly telling everyone at dinner how I helped the school janitor fix the refrigerator in the cafeteria. Can you believe it? It turned out the condenser was just clogged. Mr. Jenkins showed me how to clean it, and we fixed it in half an hour. My father can hardly tear himself away from his smartphone, where he is looking at stock market reports. Wonderful. My mother frowns, pushing her plate away. Emma, dear, girls shouldn't be messing around with dirty machinery. You have such beautiful hands, why ruin them? I'm 17, and I'm telling my parents that I don't want to study economics like they planned. I found a technical program for industrial equipment maintenance. This is a passing phase. Her mother cuts her off. No daughter of Tallulah's is going to fix other people's refrigerators. It's humiliating. But I like it. I'm good at mechanics. I'm good at it. Childish whims, Yvonne raises her voice. Dexter, tell her. My father sighs, taking off his glasses. Emma, be reasonable. You understand that this kind of work isn't for people of our class. I'm 20 years old, standing in the middle of the living room with a suitcase. Another scandal has just ended. My mother found out that I'm secretly taking courses in refrigerator repair. You never think about your family, only about your selfish desires, Yvonne screams. We've invested so much in you, and you— What have you invested? I ask quietly. Constant criticism? Controlling my every move? Have you ever asked me what I want? We know better what you need, my father interrupts. As long as you live in our house. I don't live here anymore, I say, grabbing the handle of my suitcase. Goodbye. I blinked, returning to the present. The kitchen of my rented apartment was flooded with morning sunlight. A calendar hung on the wall with client visits marked on it. On the refrigerator were magnets from different cities where I had traveled for professional development courses. It was a small but cozy apartment that I paid for myself, not a penny from my parents. I got up, rinsed my cup, and went to the window. Down in the parking lot was my work van with the Tallulah Cold logo, simple but tasteful. I started the company 3 years ago after several years of working as an assistant to an old master. At first, I served small grocery stores and cafes, taking on any job I could find. Now my clients included restaurants, food factories, and medical centers with biomaterial storage facilities. My phone vibrated again. This time it was a work call. Kate, my administrator, informed me that the Baxter meat processing plant had rescheduled today's visit, but there was an urgent call from the Portofino restaurant. Their wine cellar cooling system had failed. "Thanks, Kate. I'll take Portofino." Anything else urgent for the evening of the 18th? I glanced at the invitation lying on the table. Nothing yet, but the Seawolf called. They're having some trouble setting up a new system. It's not critical, but it may require a visit. Great. Put them on for the evening of the 18th. I'm free. After hanging up, I gathered my tools and put them in my bag. There was not even a hint of sadness left in me about my father's upcoming birthday, only a rational decision. What was the point of going somewhere where I wasn't welcome? It was high time I stopped hoping for my parents' approval. I had my own life, my own achievements, my own decisions. Closing the door to the apartment, I glanced one last time at the invitation lying alone on the table. Then I headed resolutely for the elevator, already thinking about how I would repair the cooling system in the Portofino. My phone vibrated briefly in my pocket, a message from Lila, a friend from technical college. "Hi, how about dinner this Friday? You, me, and a big steak at Ugly's? We need to celebrate your new contract." I smiled. These were the people I really wanted to spend time with, people who appreciated me for who I was. I quickly typed a reply. "Great idea. I'll bring the wine. And yes, you won't believe it, I wasn't invited to the family celebration again. I'll tell you all about it when I see you." As I rode down in the elevator, I felt a strange sense of calm. Ahead of me was a workday filled with what I truly loved, solving technical puzzles, precision work with my hands and mind. I would spend the evening of May 18th doing what I did best, not trying to live up to someone else's expectations. The work van's Tallulah Cold logo gleamed cheerfully in the sun. I threw my tool bag on the passenger seat and started the engine. The day was in full swing, and I was determined to make it a productive one. I turned on the radio in the car. The DJ was cheerfully talking about the upcoming weekend and the good weather. As I pulled out of the parking lot, I caught myself thinking that I didn't care what happened at the birthday party. 6 years ago, that attitude would have been impossible. I was still craving my parents' approval, trying to prove that my choices were right. Now I didn't need their praise or their understanding. Passing the business center where my father's office was located, I didn't even turn my head. The traffic light at the intersection turned yellow, and I slowed down smoothly. A luxury sedan pulled up next to me, the same one my father drove. A man in a business suit was sitting behind the wheel, talking on the phone with a tense expression on his face. I used to think that important phone calls and business meetings were the only way to be successful. Now I knew that my hands covered in machine oil and my toolbox were worth no less than all those ties and presentations. The traffic light turned green, and I drove on. Ahead of me lay the Portofino with its temperamental wine cooling system, and in the evening I would have free time to spend on myself, not on another round of condemnation from my parents. The compressor hummed unevenly, with distinct pauses that immediately revealed the problem. I pressed the stethoscope against the side panel of the refrigerator and listened, trying to locate the source of the noise. Mr. Patel, the owner of a small grocery store called Freshness, shifted nervously from foot to foot behind me. "Bad, huh?" he asked with a noticeable Indian accent. "Really bad?" I smiled, not looking up from my work. "It's not as bad as it seems. Looks like a faulty valve or a blockage in the system. I'll take a look." That old refrigerator was one of the first I had repaired on my own, back when I was just starting out on my own. 3 years ago, Mr. Patel had taken a chance on a young woman when all the other repairmen had quoted him exorbitant prices. Since then, I had serviced his equipment regularly, and he had become one of my most loyal customers. I turned off the power and carefully removed the protective panel. The internal components were covered with a thick layer of dust, not surprising, given the location of the shop on a busy street. Taking out my flashlight, I carefully inspected the tubes, valves, and electrical connections. "Here's the problem," I said, pointing to the clogged filter and cracked pipe. "The filter is clogged and the refrigerant isn't circulating properly, and there's a small leak here. I can fix it right now. I have the parts." Mr. Patel breathed a sigh of relief. "Thank you, Miss Emma. You're a real magician." I laughed as I took a new filter and hose out of my bag. "No magic, just good technical training." As I worked, I remembered the first time I encountered refrigeration equipment. I was 14, and our refrigerator at home started making strange noises. My mother wanted to call a repairman, but I was fascinated with taking apart old radios at the time, so I asked if I could take a look myself. My father laughed at my enthusiasm, but gave me permission, confident that I would give up quickly. I spent the entire evening with the user manual and video tutorials on the internet. By morning, I had found the problem, a clogged capacitor, and even suggested a solution. My parents called a repairman anyway, but he confirmed my diagnosis and praised my observation skills. That moment was a turning point in my life. I enjoyed the satisfaction of solving a technical problem, of making a broken mechanism work again thanks to my efforts. "I remember when you first came here," said Mr. Patel, watching me work. "So young in those big boots and with a huge toolbox. My wife thought you were a real master's assistant." I smiled, remembering that day. In fact, I was terrified because it was my first solo call after leaving my mentor, old Master James. But I couldn't show my fear. A woman in this profession can't look unsure. My knees were shaking, I admitted, securing the new pipe. "I was afraid I wouldn't be able to do it, but you did, and you've always done it since then. You know, I tell all my business friends about you. I say, if you want a reliable refrigeration specialist, call Miss Emma." I nodded gratefully, feeling a warm wave of pride. There had been many doubts and obstacles at the beginning of my journey. I remembered how I had tried to get an apprenticeship with various technicians, but many had turned me down as soon as they saw me. A young girl with thin wrists and neat manicure. "This isn't a woman's job. You won't be able to handle the heavy equipment. Customers won't take you seriously." I heard these phrases dozens of times. Only James, a 70-year-old master with 40 years of experience, saw my potential. "The most important things in our business are your head and patience," he said. "Strength can be compensated for with the right tools and ingenuity." For 2 years, I was his apprentice and assistant, soaking up every bit of experience. We serviced small shops, restaurants, medical offices, anyone who needed their refrigeration equipment fixed. James generously shared his knowledge and contacts, and when he decided to retire, he recommended me to his regular customers. Not everyone agreed to work with a girl, but enough gave me a chance. I worked twice as hard as any man in the profession, paid more attention to detail, always answered calls, and was never late. Gradually, I built up a client base, and then recommendations started coming in from satisfied customers. All done. I turned on the refrigerator and listened with satisfaction to its steady hum. Now it should work without any problems, but I would recommend a complete preventive maintenance check of all your refrigeration units. Some of them are over 10 years old and may start having problems. "How much will that cost?" Mr. Patel asked cautiously. I quoted the price, adding, "That's with a discount for regular customers, and we can split the payment into 3 monthly installments." He nodded gratefully. "You always think of your customers, Miss Emma. Not like those big companies that only know how to send huge bills." I started gathering my tools, remembering how difficult the first steps in business had been. The bank refused to give me a loan, despite my good business plan, too risky for a woman in an unusual field. I had to start with a minimal set of tools, a used van, and an office in my own apartment. The first year was especially difficult. Sometimes I had to work 18 hours a day, taking any orders, even the most unprofitable ones. I saved on everything, putting every penny toward growing the business. When my parents found out about my difficulties, they offered financial help, but on the condition that I find something more suitable. I refused. In the second year, I gained regular customers and my first large contracts. I was able to rent a small office and hire an assistant, a former classmate from technical college. By the end of the third year, Tallulah Kolad was serving 24 restaurants, several grocery chains, and even a medical center with a laboratory. Now, 5 years after starting my own business, I had a stable company with a good reputation, an office in the business district, 4 employees, and a new service van. We specialized in complex systems and emergency calls that other companies were reluctant to take on. Our motto, fast, high quality, reliable, attracted those who valued professionalism over low prices. When I finished with the tools, I wrote up the bill and handed it to Mr. Patel. "If you have any problems, call me anytime." "Thank you, Miss Emma. By the way, my niece asked about you. She's finishing school and is interested in technical professions. Maybe you could talk to her? Tell her how to become, what's it called, a refrigeration technician?" I smiled, feeling a sudden warmth from this request. Of course, I'd be happy to. Have her come to the office or give me a call. I'm always happy to help. Leaving the store, I breathed in the fresh spring air. It had been a productive day. Already 3 clients today, with 2 more visits planned. I threw my bag in the van and took out my phone to check my messages. 3 missed calls from Kate and a message. "Call back urgently. Emergency call from La Marina." I frowned. La Marina was one of the most expensive restaurants in town, specializing in seafood. We had never worked with them before. They had a regular contractor for their refrigeration equipment. I quickly dialed the office number. "Tallulah Cold," Kate answered. "Emma, I'm so glad you called. We have an emergency at La Marina. The main freezer has broken down. They have an important event today, and if the equipment isn't repaired within the next few hours, all the food will spoil." "What about their regular technician?" "He's out of town on vacation and can't come in. They're calling all the service companies. They're offering double the rate for the urgency." I quickly checked my schedule. 2 scheduled visits can be rescheduled. They're not urgent. And refrigeration equipment failure in a restaurant is a real disaster, especially when it comes to seafood, which spoils very quickly. "Okay, I'll take this call. Contact Alpine Cold and Technoclimate and ask if they can cover us with our scheduled customers. And let La Marina know that I'll be there in—" I checked the navigation system, I said, "about 40 minutes. Already done. They're desperate, so they'll be happy to see you. Ask for Chef Marco or Manager Chloe." I started the van and pulled out onto the road. The navigator plotted a route to La Marina, located in an upscale neighborhood near the waterfront. Driving past business centers and high-end boutiques, I remembered that this was where my father's birthday party was supposed to be. But today was only May 15th, 3 days before the holiday. Just a coincidence. Traffic was heavy but without any serious jams. I turned on the radio where a local DJ was discussing the upcoming city food festival. My thoughts returned to the freezer at La Marina. What could have happened? Considering the level of the establishment, the equipment should be top-notch and regularly serviced. A sudden failure could mean a serious malfunction or human error. For example, someone set the temperature too low, overloading the system. The phone rang again. The screen lit up with Layla. I answered on speakerphone. "Hi, how's the organization for Friday dinner going?" I asked. "Everything's fine," my friend replied cheerfully. "The table is booked for 7. Listen, you won't believe who I met at the mall today." "Who?" Damn it. She was in a jewelry store picking out a necklace. She saw me, pretended not to recognize me, but then came over and started asking about you. How you were doing, where you worked, if you were married. I sighed. Typical mother tactic, not calling me directly but getting information from my friends. "What did you tell her?" "That you're doing great, your business is growing, and that not everyone needs a husband to be happy." She grimaced as if she had swallowed a lemon. I laughed, imagining the scene. "Thanks for defending my honor. By the way, it's my father's birthday this week, but I was politely not invited." "Again?" Lila exclaimed indignantly. "Will they ever grow up?" "I doubt it." But you know it doesn't bother me anymore. I have my own life, my own business. By the way, I'm on my way to an emergency call at La Marina. Wow, that's the most pretentious restaurant in town. It's cool that they called you. Their regular technician isn't available, I said, slowing down at a traffic light. But it's a good chance to establish myself in the upper segment of the market. I'm sure you'll do great. Okay, I won't keep you. See you on Friday. I said goodbye and focused on the road. 10 minutes later, the elegant facade of La Marina came into view, with large panoramic windows overlooking the bay. I parked the van in the staff parking lot, grabbed my tool bag, and headed for the service entrance. At the door, I was greeted by an agitated man in a chef's uniform. "Are you from the service company?" "Thank God. I'm Marco, the head chef. We have a disaster. The main freezer broke down 2 hours ago and the temperature is rising steadily. There's $10,000 worth of seafood in there, and we have an important corporate event tonight." I held out my hand. "Emma Tallulah Cold. Show me where the equipment is and tell me when the problem started." Marco led me through the gleaming kitchen, where a team of chefs was feverishly preparing food, despite their obvious nervousness about the refrigerator situation. "It all started this morning," the head chef explained. "First, the camera started making a strange noise. Then the temperature started to rise. We moved some of the food to spare refrigerators, but they're small and can't hold everything. And tonight we have a reception for 50 people, some businessman's anniversary." I frowned, remembering my father's birthday invitation. "But no, today is only the 15th. It can't be." "Are you talking about the event on May 18th? "No, tonight." "The 15th?" Marco looked surprised. "Dexter Tallulah, a major investor. His wife moved the celebration up a week ago, something to do with a business trip from Europe." I froze. My father. Today. Here. And they didn't even bother to tell me about the change of date. "Are you okay?" Marco asked, concerned, noticing my confusion. I took a deep breath, pushing my personal emotions aside. Right now, I was here as a professional, and that was all that mattered. "Yes, everything's fine. Let's take a look at this equipment." La Marina's freezer was impressive, the latest Cryomax 3000 model with a touchscreen control panel and remote monitoring system. Following Chef Marco through the gleaming kitchen, I stopped in front of a massive steel door, from which an unfamiliar warmth emanated. "Look," Marco pointed to the display. "It should be minus 20 degrees, but now it's minus 5 and rising." I frowned. Such expensive equipment shouldn't break down without a serious reason. When was the last time it was serviced? 2 weeks ago, everything was in perfect order. Putting on gloves, I pulled open the heavy door and stepped inside the chamber. Rows of containers filled with seafood, lobsters, oysters, various types of fish, stood on shelves. Everything was carefully packaged and labeled. My professional eye immediately spotted unusual water droplets on the walls, a clear sign of a malfunction. "The defrost system is turning on when it shouldn't," I muttered, examining the pipes and compressor. "And that sound, it sounds like a blockage in the refrigerant circulation system." "Can you fix it?" Marco asked hopefully, shifting from foot to foot in the doorway. "We start serving in 2 hours, and all the food." "I'll try," I said, taking out my toolkit. "But first we need to determine the exact cause of the malfunction." I methodically checked the system components, following a diagnostic algorithm I had perfected over the years. The temperature sensors were working correctly, the electronics were not showing any errors, but the compressor was clearly malfunctioning. Crouching down, I shone my flashlight on the bottom of the unit and noticed a small puddle of oil. "There's the problem," I said, pointing to the leak. "The compressor is starved of oil. There's probably a microcrack in the pipe, through which oil and refrigerant are gradually leaking out." Marco looked at his watch with undisguised alarm. "How long will it take to repair?" "If there's a crack, we'll have to replace the pipe and refill the system. If we have the parts, it'll take about an hour and a half." The chef turned pale. "An hour? But the guests will be here in 2 hours and we need to cook. I'll do everything I can to speed up the process," I said, straightening up and reaching into my bag for a special sealant and leak detection device. "But first, we need to locate the leak." I turned on the ultraviolet detector and pointed it at the pipe system. The light from the device revealed traces of leaked refrigerant, a thin, glowing line leading to a barely visible crack in the bend of the pipe. There it is. It's quite small, but in such a critical place. I'll need a new pipe. There should be a suitable one in the van. I hurried to the service entrance, mentally going through the contents of my spare box. I had a good supply of standard parts, and there was a good chance I would find a suitable replacement for the damaged part. As I swung open the door to the parking lot, I bumped into an elegantly dressed middle-aged woman entering the restaurant. Instinctively apologizing, I had already taken a step aside when I heard a familiar, icy voice. "Emma? What are you doing here?" I froze. My mother looked at me with undisguised astonishment and irritation. She was wearing an exquisite evening gown, her hair was styled impeccably, and around her neck was the new necklace Lila had mentioned. "Hello, Mom," I replied calmly. "I'm here for work." The restaurant's refrigeration equipment had broken down. Her eyes narrowed and her mouth twisted into a disapproving grimace. "I clearly told you that your presence was unwelcome, and you decided to sneak in through the back door, show up in your work clothes, and ruin your father's evening?" I took a deep breath, holding back my rising irritation. 6 years of living on my own, and she still thought of me as a flighty teenager, ready to do anything to spite my parents. "I was called here as a refrigeration specialist. It's my job to fix broken systems. And I had no idea that my father's birthday had been moved to today." "How convenient," my mother said, glancing contemptuously at my overalls and heavy tool bag. "And of course, you just happen to be the only specialist available in town." At that moment, Marco appeared from around the corner, looking around anxiously. "Miss Tallulah," he exclaimed when he saw me. "Did you find the part we need? The temperature keeps rising. We're moving everything we can into extra refrigerators, but we're running out of space fast." My mother looked back and forth between me and the chef, confused. "I'm going to the van to get the spare parts," I replied to Marco, ignoring my mother. "I'll be back in 2 minutes." "Please hurry," begged the chef. "The whole evening is in jeopardy." I walked around my mother toward the van, but she grabbed my arm. "You can't just barge into your father's party," she hissed. "It's unacceptable." "Mom," I gently but firmly pulled my hand away. "There's tens of thousands of dollars worth of seafood that could go bad. And your perfect party will be ruined if the guests have nothing to eat. I'm not here as your daughter, but as a professional. As soon as I finish the repairs, I'll leave." Without waiting for a response, I quickly went to the van. Behind me, I heard my mother's indignant exclamations as she said something to Marco, who had approached, but I had no time for family drama. Every minute of delay meant an increase in the temperature in the freezer and the risk of spoiling expensive food. Finding a suitable pipe in the spare box, I hurried back to the restaurant. To my relief, my mother had disappeared, probably gone to the dining room to prepare for the guests. Marco nervously fiddled with the collar of his chef's jacket. "Your mother, is very unhappy," he muttered. "She demanded that we call another specialist immediately." "And what did you say?" I asked, heading for the freezer. "That we wouldn't be able to find another specialist until morning, and by then all the food would have to be thrown away," he shrugged. She wasn't thrilled. I smiled, imagining my mother's expression. Putting on gloves, I began the repair. The job required concentration and precision. I had to carefully disconnect the damaged pipe without losing any of the refrigerant, then install a new one and restart the system. The head chef kept peeking into the freezer, watching my every move and glancing anxiously at his watch. Finally, the new pipe was in place, and I began the process of refilling the system with refrigerant. "How much longer?" Marco asked again. 15 to 20 minutes, I replied, adjusting the gas supply. "We need to wait for the system to reach operating mode and make sure the temperature stabilizes." At that moment, the kitchen door flew open and I heard my mother's sharp voice. "I demand an explanation." "Why is she still here?" A calm but insistent male voice followed. "Yvonne, let's not make a scene. The girl is repairing the equipment." "You don't understand, Dexter. It's Emma. She came here on purpose to ruin your party." I clenched my teeth, trying not to get distracted from my work. Judging by the voices, my parents were approaching the freezer. Marco rushed toward them, trying to explain the situation, but his words were drowned out by my mother's indignant exclamations. Finally, the system was refilled, and I began to test it. The compressor hummed evenly, without the previous jerks and pauses, and the sensors showed that the temperature was starting to drop. I felt the familiar satisfaction of a job well done. "That's it. The system is up and running," I said to Marco as he entered. "The temperature has started to drop, and should reach normal in about 40 minutes. I'll stay a little longer to make sure everything is working steadily." "Thank you, Miss Tallulah." The chef breathed a sigh of relief. "You saved the evening." Behind him, my parents appeared. My father looked confused, and my mother was openly angry. "Emma," she said coldly, "what is this masquerade? We agreed you wouldn't come." "I wasn't planning on coming to the party," I replied calmly, gathering my tools. "I was called in as a specialist. I'm almost done and will be leaving soon." My father looked at me in bewilderment, as if he were seeing me for the first time. Well, in a sense, he was. He had never seen me working in my field, in my element. "You really know what you're doing?" he asked uncertainly, nodding toward the refrigeration unit. "This is my profession, Dad," I replied, closing the access panel to the system. "I've been doing this for 6 years." "Dexter, you don't believe this is a coincidence, do you?" my mother interjected. "She deliberately caused the breakdown to get an invitation." I shook my head, amazed at the absurdity of the accusation. "Seriously, Mom? You think I damaged expensive equipment, risking ruining the restaurant's food and reputation, just to get into a party I wasn't invited to?" "I don't know what you're capable of," she exclaimed. "You've always been a difficult child, always going against the grain." "Excuse me," said an unfamiliar male voice from the doorway. "Can I speak to the technician?" We all turned around. Standing in the doorway was a tall man in his 50s, dressed in an immaculate business suit. His graying temples and confident posture betrayed a man accustomed to power and attention. "Randall!" my father exclaimed, instantly switching to a business tone. "You're here. We're just, dealing with a minor technical issue." The man nodded and looked at me. His eyes widened in surprise. "Tallulah Cold," he said, looking at the logo on my jumpsuit. "So your company does repairs?" I nodded. "Yes, I'm the owner of Tallulah Cold." What an incredible coincidence. He stepped forward and held out his hand. "Randall Winship, Winship Foods. I've been trying to contact your company for months. We're building a new production facility, and I need some advice on refrigeration systems." I shook his hand, feeling slightly surprised. "Really? That's strange. My administrator usually passes all serious inquiries on to me." "I called 3 times, Randall explained, "but each time I was told you were booked up for 6 months. I was going to talk to Dexter today to see if he could—" He faltered and looked from me to my father, puzzled. "Could he help you get in touch with me?" I finished his thought with a hint of irony. "I'm afraid my father didn't even know my company existed. We're not particularly close." "Emma?" Randall said, confused. "You're Dexter's daughter?" "Yes," I nodded. "Although now that's only relevant for the family tree. Otherwise, we've been living separate lives for a long time." An awkward pause hung in the air. Randall looked stunned, shifting his gaze from me to my father and back. My father stood frozen with an unreadable expression on his face, while my mother looked like she was about to explode with anger. This is incredible," Randall finally said. "I was looking for a specialist to consult, and it turns out that my longtime business partner's daughter owns the best refrigeration service company in town." "The best?" my father asked, showing genuine interest for the first time. "Is your company that successful?" I nodded modestly, continuing to monitor the freezer's readings. "We have a good reputation. We specialize in difficult cases and emergency calls." "A good reputation?" Randall laughed. "Dexter, your daughter is too modest. Tallulah Cold serves half of the city's high-end restaurants and several large food manufacturers. My friend Alex from Sea Delicacies says she saved his business after the hurricane when all the other technicians threw up their hands." I was embarrassed by such praise, unaccustomed to hearing recognition of my achievements from strangers, especially in front of my parents. "I'm just doing my job," I replied, closing the control panel. The system has stabilized and the temperature is dropping to normal. In half an hour, the food can be returned to the chamber. Marco, who was standing nearby, breathed a sigh of relief and hurried to share the news with his chefs. The kitchen was once again filled with the sounds of busy work. "Miss Tallulah," Randall said to me, "I am very interested in your consultation. We are having serious problems integrating the refrigeration systems in the new workshop. I would be grateful if you could find the time to take a look at our project." "Of course," I nodded. "Call the office tomorrow, and I'll ask Kate to make some time in my schedule." "Great!" Randall beamed. "And please stay for dinner tonight. I'd like to discuss some details of the project, if you don't mind." Before I could answer, my mother interjected, "That's impossible. We're having a family celebration, and Emma wasn't invited." "Yvonne," Randall interrupted her gently but firmly, "I'm in negotiations with Dexter about a major investment project, and if I need expert advice to make this project a success—" He paused meaningfully. My mother paled, clearly realizing that her husband's business interests were in direct conflict with her desire to keep me away from respectable society. My father cleared his throat. "Of course Emma can stay for dinner," he said with a forced smile. "After all, it's my birthday and I'm happy to see my daughter." I suppressed a smirk. It was funny how quickly his attitude had changed when it turned out that my inappropriate profession was suddenly valuable to his business. "Thank you for the invitation," I said, turning to Randall. "But first I need to finish my work here and make sure the system is functioning properly." "Of course," he nodded. "Professionalism comes first. That's one of the reasons why your clients value you so highly." I returned to the freezer control panel, checking the sensor readings. The temperature was steadily dropping, everything was working as it should. Behind me, I could hear Randall talking quietly with his father. Something about refrigeration technology and optimizing energy costs. Marco, who had been watching the whole scene with his mouth open, finally came to his senses and approached me. "So you're the birthday boy's daughter?" he asked quietly. "What a coincidence." "Not really a coincidence," I smiled. "There aren't that many companies in San Mateo that specialize in industrial refrigeration repair. We were bound to cross paths sooner or later." The chef shook his head. "In any case, you saved my reputation and the entire evening. Whatever I cook tonight, your portion will be the biggest and tastiest." I laughed, feeling genuine joy for the first time that day. The situation was absurd. I had come to fix a refrigerator and ended up in the middle of a family drama that culminated in an unexpected acknowledgement of my professional skills. My mother disappeared from the kitchen, probably trying to cope with the shock and figure out how to save face in front of the guests. My father and Randall were still chatting animatedly, with Randall glancing at me respectfully and nodding, as if confirming something he had long suspected. The system finally reached the optimal temperature, and I closed the control panel. The job was done, and now I had to decide whether to accept the invitation to stay for dinner or leave, leaving my parents to ponder what had happened. Part of me wanted to leave proudly, showing that I didn't need their belated recognition. But another, more practical part of me understood that the contract with Winship Foods could be a significant step for my company. And for that, it was worth enduring one evening in the company of my parents. I took a deep breath, preparing myself for the most awkward dinner of my life. The dessert plates had already been cleared away, and the waiters were serving coffee and digestives. Dinner was coming to an end. I glanced at the round clock on the restaurant wall. It was almost 11 p.m. It had been a long day at work, but the bill for the emergency repairs at this prestigious establishment more than made up for the extra time. Randall Winship, sitting to my right, finished his enthusiastic story about his new production facility, and now the conversation at the table had moved on to casual small talk. Most of the guests, mainly my father's business associates and city council members with their spouses, were already beginning to say their goodbyes. I finished my espresso and carefully placed the cup on the saucer. It was time to leave. It had been a strange evening. I had been seated at the far end of the table, away from the center where my parents were sitting, but next to Randall, who had spent the entire dinner asking me about the intricacies of servicing refrigeration systems. His mother diligently pretended I didn't exist, occasionally glancing sideways when Randall's laughter became too loud. His father tried several times to catch my eye, but I was completely absorbed in professional conversation. "I'll go thank the birthday boy," Randall said, getting up. "And we definitely need to discuss your visit to our facility. Maybe next week?" "Contact my office," I said, handing him my business card. "Kate will arrange a convenient time for you." Randall smiled, took the card, and headed toward my father, leaving me alone at the nearly empty table. I took out my phone to check my messages. Kate had sent me a report on tomorrow's visits. Nothing urgent, just routine maintenance for 3 regular clients. Lila asked if I wanted to join her and her boyfriend on Sunday for a trip to a new amusement park. Lost in my messages, I didn't notice someone sitting down next to me. I looked up and met my father's gaze. He looked unusually uncertain, fiddling with his cufflink. "Emma," he began after an awkward pause, "I wanted to thank you for saving the evening. The head chef said that if it weren't for your quick fix, he would have had to cancel the party." I nodded, putting my phone away. "You're welcome. It's my job." "Yes, your job," he faltered, clearly searching for the right words. "I must admit I had no idea of the scale of your business. Randall speaks very highly of your professional qualities. Randall hasn't seen me at work yet." I shrugged. "But it's nice to hear good recommendations." My father cleared his throat. "I just want to say that I'm proud of you. Building a successful company from scratch is impressive." 5 years ago, those words would have made my heart flutter with joy. Now they elicited only mild surprise, like a belated compliment from a casual acquaintance. "Thanks," I replied flatly. It wasn't easy, but it was worth it. There was a pause in the conversation. My father was clearly expecting a more emotional response, but I wasn't going to play the touching reunion scene. Too late, too insincere. "Maybe we could—" He hesitated. "See each other more often? You could come over for family dinners. Your mother misses you too, even if she doesn't show it." I barely suppressed a laugh. My mother misses me? The woman who had been hissing at me half an hour ago, demanding that I leave the restaurant immediately? "I have a very busy schedule," I replied politely, but distantly. "My workdays often run late, and emergency calls can come in at any time." Of course," my father agreed hastily. "Work comes first." "I understand." Over his shoulder, I noticed my mother approaching. Her forced smile did not bode well. "What are you talking about?" she asked, sitting down next to my father. "I was thanking Emma for saving the evening," he replied, "and we were talking about her business." "Oh, yes, business," my mother said with a barely perceptible hint of disdain. "How unusual for a young girl to be involved in such rough work. But if you're good at it?" I watched silently as she attempted to feign acceptance. 6 years of contempt for my profession couldn't disappear in one evening just because an influential businessman had expressed interest in my services. "You know," my mother continued with feigned nonchalance, "your father could help you expand. He has a lot of connections in business circles, and if you want to grow the company—" "My company is growing according to plan," I interrupted politely. "We have steady growth and a good reputation." "Yes, but with our help, you could achieve so much more." My mother leaned forward. "Move to a more prestigious office, hire more employees, maybe even change direction to something more suitable for a woman." There it was. The real reason for her sudden interest in my career was her desire to reshape it according to her ideas of a decent job. "Thanks for the offer," I said, taking my business card out of my pocket and handing it to my mother. "But Tallulah Cold is doing just fine on its own. If you ever have any problems with your refrigeration equipment, my administrator takes requests during business hours, from 8 to 6. My mother stared at the card as if it were a dead frog. My father cleared his throat awkwardly. "Emma, your mother just wanted to offer her help, family support." "I appreciate that," I replied, getting up from the table. "But it's not necessary right now. Thanks for dinner. I have to go, I have work tomorrow." "But we didn't even get to talk properly," my mother protested. "You haven't been home in 6 years. You could show a little respect for your parents and—" "Yvonne." Her father stopped her quietly but firmly. I noticed Randall approaching and shifted my attention to him with relief. Mr. Winship, I was just about to leave. It was nice meeting you. Likewise, Miss Tallulah. He shook my hand energetically. I'll call your administrator tomorrow. Our project really needs some expert advice. I'd be happy to help, I nodded. Let's discuss the details at the office. We have special software for modeling refrigeration systems that will help optimize your project. Great, Randall beamed. I always told Dexter that the future belongs to innovative technologies. Yes, you're right. I smiled, a polite business smile. See you next week. Shaking hands with the father and nodding to the mother, I headed for the exit. I could feel their eyes on my back, my father's confused and my mother's indignant. Well, it wasn't my problem. I had come as a professional, done my job, and now I was going back to my normal life. As I passed through the kitchen, I caught an approving glance from Chef Marco, who gave me a thumbs up, pointing to the working freezer. I smiled back and left through the service entrance. The cool evening air refreshed my head after the stuffy restaurant. I took a deep breath, feeling the tension of the last few hours gradually melt away. The van was waiting in the service parking lot, faithful and reliable as always. I got behind the wheel but didn't start the engine right away. I took out my phone and dialed Lila. Despite the late hour, she answered almost immediately. You won't believe where I am right now, I said instead of saying hello. At a bar with a hot bartender? My friend guessed. If only. I'm at my father's birthday party at La Marina. What? Lila exclaimed indignantly. They didn't invite you. You just showed up? No, of course not. I laughed. I was called to fix a freezer. Can you imagine? I show up and it's my father's birthday, which they moved without even telling me. Damn, what irony. And what happened? Classic drama. His mother tried to throw me out, but the head chef insisted that I finish the repair, and then my father's business partner showed up, who it turns out has been trying to hire me for a new project for a long time. Lila burst out laughing. God, their faces. I can just imagine your mother's expression when she found out that her failure of a daughter was a sought-after professional. It was something else, I smiled, remembering my mother's confused face. And after dinner, they suddenly decided they wanted to help me with my business. Can you imagine? Let me guess. Reorient me to something more feminine? Exactly. I gave them my business card and told them to call during business hours if they had any problems with the refrigerator. Lila laughed again. Perfect. You're my hero. Okay, enough about me. Did you write about the amusement park on Sunday? Yes, a new one opened with some super American roller coasters. Brent wants to go, but I'm scared to go alone. Will you come with me? I'd love to. I finally started the engine. Text me the time and place. I have to get home now. I have to work tomorrow. We said goodbye, and I drove out of the parking lot, heading home. A strange day was coming to an end. I felt neither bitterness nor triumph, nor any desire to analyze my relationship with my parents. Just tired after a long day at work and looking forward to the weekend with my friends. Driving past the brightly lit shop windows and night cafes, I thought about the upcoming consultation for Randall's company. An interesting project, good pay, an opportunity to expand my client base. A purely business approach, no unnecessary emotions. My phone vibrated again. An unfamiliar number appeared on the screen, and I turned on the speakerphone. Emma Tallulah speaking. Miss Tallulah, this is Marco from La Marina. Sorry for calling so late, but I wanted to thank you again for saving our evening. And also, our director is wondering if we could sign a permanent contract with you for your services. Our current contractor doesn't inspire confidence after today. Of course, I replied. Have your director contact my office tomorrow. We'll discuss the terms of the agreement. Great. And, your parents are gone, if you're wondering. I smiled. It seemed that Marco had noticed the tension and decided that I was avoiding meeting them. Thanks for the information, but it doesn't matter. I'm already on my way home. Of course. Thanks again and good night. After hanging up, I turned up the volume on the radio. A cheerful tune was playing, and I found myself tapping my fingers on the steering wheel in time to the music. Life went on as usual. Tomorrow there would be new customers, new challenges, new tasks, and today's strange episode with my parents was already becoming just a funny story to tell my friends over dinner. My house came into view, a cozy apartment building in a quiet neighborhood. I parked in my usual spot, grabbed my tool bag, and headed for the entrance. Another workday was over. Nothing special, just work. A message from Kate popped up on my phone. The Riverside supermarket called this morning. They're having problems with their display cases. I put them first on tomorrow's schedule for 9 in the morning. I sent the details to your email. I sent a short okay and went up to my apartment. Tomorrow would be a normal day. Customers, refrigeration systems, technical problems that needed solving. No family drama, no awkward conversations, no attempts to prove anything to anyone, and that was exactly what I needed.